Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to SLJ's Best Books 2020. My name is Jameson Reynolds, and I'm the Director of Marketing Strategy for the Library Corporation, or TLC, as you might know us. It's been a thrill for us to be a part of the SLJ Summit for many years, and especially this year, as the conference has made the successful pivot to a digital platform. I'm sure many of you, if you haven't already, plan on adding the amazing titles we're going to hear about over the course of this session to your collections. But let's be honest, it won't do you or your school communities much good to have these titles in your schools if you can't find them. And this is where TLC can be of help. LS2 Pack and LS2 Kids are the discovery layers of our library management software platform, Library.Solution for Schools. Having scored a platinum level of Modern Library Award, we can tell you with confidence that these are amazing tools for your students and staff alike to find material in your library or media center. Our relevance-based searching is second to none, and for those that choose to utilize Accelerated Reader or Lexile in your curriculum, we have that integrated directly into those tools. If you don't use AR or Lexile, that's great too, because you don't have to utilize them. Our category searching in LS2 Kids is a favorite feature amongst our youngest borrowers, and for those that are a little older or like series, our series searching lays out all the titles with the right cover art in the right order. But beyond these management software tools, let's say you order e-copies of these books titles from, let's say, Cloud Library by Biblioteca or Overdrive, including what used to be RB Digital. TLC offers a service, regardless of ILS software, called eBibliophile, that search against titles that you ordered, and if there is a data-rich record available, we will provide that record instead of what may be a brief vendor record, fully RDAI'd and fully authority-rich records. Better data is going to lead to better discovery, which is going to lead to better library utilization. Thank you for attending SLJ Summit 2020. For more information about TLC, check out our booth, check out our on-demand session called At Your Data Service, or visit tlcdelivers.com. And now, please enjoy the best books of 2020. Shelley, please take it away.
Thanks so much, Jameson. And thanks everyone for joining us for our highlights of SLJ's best books. And just a few housekeeping though, before we begin. Let's see. Feel free to interact with the windows on your screen. There we go. If you need some troubleshooting help or navigation tips, just click on the appropriate widget at the bottom of your screen. You can also send a note through the Q&A window if you need additional assistance or if you have any questions for our speakers or for any of us editors here. Okay, so off to the best books. Here are the editors that worked on the best books this year, and each of them worked with a committee of reviewers, of valued reviewers, SLJ reviewers, to select among the many, many books that were published this year, the best ones, the ones that we believe all of your libraries should have in their collections. There are a total of 108 titles on our best books list, our biggest best books list ever, and we're super happy about that and proud. We start off with the stars, but then we also, the SLJ starred books, but then we also branch out to think about our communities, to think about the curricular needs of all of each and every one of you, and what we feel are the books that are elevated to the top. So we're going to start off with Kim, our picture books editor, who will talk about some of the picture books we selected.
Thank you, Shelley. I'm really super excited to be here. I have no idea what's new this year. I've only done this virtually, and so it's just sort of thrilling to have seen so many good books and to have the chance to present them today. Here's our first slide. It takes years for picture books to come into readers' hands, all the work behind the scenes, the ideas, the illustrators. So it feels like a rare and wonderful convergence, complementing new waves of social justice to find these three titles, all perfect for the best books list. All Because You Matter is a parent's message to a boy who will be challenged by school, injustice, and more. And yet as a descendant of kings and queens ready to take on his realm and grow. The joyful paintings take readers on a luminous journey from past to present. Next is I Am Every Good Thing, where Derek Barnes finds glory and purpose in the face of every child, every boy, celebrating the empowered child while also briefly skating across the racist pond of others' insults and dismissals. I can't get over the powerful message in this book and how affirming it is. And then Christian Robinson goes to You Matter, and he telescopes that message of mattering even more in the entire universe of what matters or who matters. It is you. Believing that not every child hears this or hears it enough, Robinson makes of cities and countries and planets a safe place that honors all things, smallest to largest and back again to the human scale. All three of these books are just tremendous in their messaging. On our next slide, we have, this is the year when many of the families or cultures that have been othered, in the West, when we don't understand somebody, we other them. And they're at last finding their ways into the pages of picture books. It's not a new process, but we're seeing more and more of it. It's starting to snowball in many of these own voices books. I will tell you about Nana Akua Goes to School first, because in a committee meeting marked by cordiality and respect, it became really heated how to describe this book, how to show our high praise for it. And finally, the phrase slam dunk wins. Nana Akua is a loving grandmother who bears the ritual marks of her family back home in West Africa on her face. And her loving granddaughter finds a way to bridge the reactions of others to these scars in a story soaked with symbols and grace. And then we have the Vadolapani and Mylapore markets in the author's hometown in India, inspiring A Gift for Amma, Market Day in India, a sensory book that's about colors and counting and smells and scents and sights, wrapped up in an appealing narrative featuring a young girl searching for a perfect gift for her beloved Amma. A glossary in the back gives you everything you need to know, but I really couldn't wait to start traveling again after reading this book. Next, we have two more books in that category of finding a new way for voices that have been overlooked to find their way onto the page. The Paper Boat is Tao Lam's deeply personal, soul-bearing tale that protects children from the facts of the horrific events of being a boat person, while remaining emotionally authentic to the events of leaving Vietnam. In paper-cut, full-throttle emotional scenes, the plight of immigrants today connects with the echoes of harrowing immigration stories that we're hearing now have always heard. She really makes the case for let's change the narrative. To come to the new country needs more hope. We also have Salma, the Syrian chef, where a young girl seeking to cheer her mother up. Her mother, they're new to this country. They're alone in Vancouver, but Salma wants to cheer her mother up. She hits on the idea of making her mother's smile return by making her favorite dish, and a community center helps her with the ingredients, the cooking. It's a message of love and acceptance served up right on time. Can I click to the next? Yes. Okay, so the last four of this sneak peek, and I do want to emphasize this is half our list. We have many more picture books on the list, and you'll just have to wait till November for those. We were delighted to find that a lot of independent publishers showed up, not only in the stars, but on our best books list. They're just knocking it out of the park, smaller and indie publishers, and they're bringing us to the underserved voices. In I Do Not Like Stories, the heir apparent to David Macaulay's Black and White, we have a curmudgeonly little boy who is actually an honest-to-God, smoke and mirrors tale teller of the First Order. The truth of what's really going on in this book is in front of readers' eyes. It's hiding in plain sight. Next, I want to talk about the amazing Woodpecker Girl. She's called that. She doesn't have the use of her limbs. She's called Woodpecker Girl because an amazing art teacher attaches a paintbrush to her head with a band, allowing her to peck away at paper, creating exuberant pieces of art. The real-life heroine's tale proves that personal expression knows no boundaries. And in fact, art by the girl on whose life this story is based, art is included in these amazing pages. We have Nonstop by the amazing Tommy Ungerer. The book has been described as apocalyptic, dangerous, melancholy, and bibliotherapy. he was called a visionary, prescient, and with this final book about seeking shelter in a world gone mad, are any of us familiar with that? He leaves us with this note in a bottle. It's a loving message from someone who's known as melancholy. And last is the magnificent Homespun Brown by a wonderful little publisher in Maine called Tilbury Press. It's a world where small girls romp in a radiant place that includes hijab and wheelchair, as well as golden leaves and steaming hot chocolate. All the way back in January, our reviewer called this a joyful ode to the color brown. But when you go in these pages, what you find is a joyful ode to childhood, inclusion, and the art of cozy. It's a fantastic book. I think someone else is going to talk about chapter books and middle grades. Shelley, is that you?
Yeah, I'll be talking about chapter books, and Manaz will be talking about middle grade. So chapter books are often the types of books that kind of get lost in the best books discussion, but we wanted to make sure we could elevate a few because they're so important and so necessary. And as Kim mentioned, these are only highlights. This is a small sneak peek at our list. As I mentioned, 108 titles, but all of them will be revealed November 23rd on our website. So the nice thing about these chapter books, two of these that are here on the screen, Skunk and Badger and Our Friend Hedgehog, they reminded us of that very classic feeling of Frog and Toad and the classic friendship story of two people or creatures who you would think wouldn't get along, but eventually, little by little, their friendships bloom. And then we also have a kind of a biographical, fictionalized take on Alicia Alonso, who is a Cuban dancer, and it's all about her struggle to become the ballet dancer that she wanted to, and while still incorporating her own culture. So all of these are titles that we hope that you add to your collection, especially for those younger elementary school students. Now, Manaz, take it away.
Thanks, Shelley. So I'm going to be talking about middle grade next. This year, we were really struck by how many middle grade novels were taking on such serious topics, subjects that many long assumed that middle grade just couldn't handle. So, for example, Fighting Words by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley really doesn't pull any punches when it comes to abuse and self-harm. And the book Chirp by Kate Messner is quirky and light in some ways, but it also deals with molestation by a trusted adult and centers on a protagonist who hasn't yet disclosed that. And similarly, King and the Dragonflies by Kaysen Callender tackles the death of a sibling and also centers on a protagonist grappling with being gay. Our middle grade editor, Ashley Williams, described King and the Dragonflies as the novel or film Mysterious Skin for a middle grade audience, and that got kind of a big yikes for me. But it's such a testament to the power of these authors that they can grapple candidly with the topics, yet keep the book so relatable to the middle grade audience. Next up, we have some middle grade fantasy, and these are all rich, vivid, exciting reads. Maya and the Rising Dark is a wonderful one. It's set in Southside Chicago, with a main character who is the only one who can see these strange entities. It borrows heavily from African lore, and we love the book so much, in part because of how it ties contemporary kids of color to their spiritual origins. Similarly, When You Trap a Tiger centers on a young girl named Lily. She and her family are nursing her sick grandmother, and Lily uncovers a secret from her grandmother's past. And the book is very lush, and it weaves Korean folktales into a very contemporary story. And I feel like so many of us growing up, reading so much middle grade fantasy, often really saw books centering on white characters. And I think it's so important that we create not just realistic fiction, but also fantasy that reflects the experiences of children of color. Our other two fantasy middle grade that we're revealing are Magnificent Monsters of Cedar Street and Twilight Hauntings, which are both incredibly strong books that take on what appears to be a very, well-trod trope, the idea of the chosen one, but they take this idea and really run with it in a very creative and imaginative way. All of these are musts for your fantasy middle grade collections. And then finally, we have some middle grade from, our beloved kid-lit masters. We have Ways to Make Sunshine, which is Renee Watson's answer to Ramona Quimby. It's a very young and very sweet middle grade novel about a girl whose father loses his job and gets a new one that doesn't pay as much, and what happens when the family has to move to a new home. We also have Erin Entrada Kelly taking on some recent historical fiction with We Dream of Space, which is set against the Challenger explosion and centers on a family whose members kind of orbit one another but don't seem to be fully able to engage with each other. And Loretta Little Looks Back is by Andre Davis Pinkney, and it features 3 members of an African-American family telling stories. What emerges is a deep, profound history spanning from 1927 to 1968, from a sharecropper's field to the 1968 presidential election. We also have Aida Salazar's book Land of the Cranes, which focuses on a young girl who fled to Los Angeles as a result of cartel wars in Mexico. Her father is arrested by ICE, and soon she and her mother are detained too. And these books are all masterpieces of middle grade. They vary in tone, but they're all such testaments to the power of family. And like the other books on our list, they really show that there's almost no topic that middle grade can't take on. And I think I'm going to hand it over to you, Shelley, for YA. I think you might be muted.
Classic rookie mistake. Sorry about that. So these 3 novels here are novels in verse, and our YA editor and her committee, Katie Hirschberger, we're really impressed with how these authors use the novel in verse format to kind of play with the storytelling, and definitely teens will be drawn in by these stories. Let's see. I want to make sure we get through all the titles, so it might be a little bit brief, but please definitely check these books out. So next we have YA fantasy, and it's a nice range of different types of fantasy that we have this year. Raybearer is very much in the Afrofuturism vein of fantasy, and we have Legendborn, which is more low fantasy, urban fantasy, and also The Mermaid, the Witch, and the Sea, which is very traditional fantasy, but with pirates and the mermaids and witches, right? So, but the nice thing, the great, amazing thing about all of these titles is that their world building is so strong and the plotting is so strong that they really draw you in, and especially teens who are looking for something that, for titles that represent their own identities, these are great selections. And next, we have, pushing the slides to the audience. See if this could work. There you go. Okay, so we have in the slide different queer stories that we really wanted to highlight this year. And many of these are coming out stories, but a lot of them are discovering coming of age tales and how these young people not only figure out their own identities, but how they interact with their families, how they interact with their communities. And there's really lots of intersectionality among these titles. For example, How It All Blew Up. It's about a young man who is trying to figure out his queer identity, but also figuring out how his Muslim identity works into it. So please, these are amazing titles and really offering a diversity of representation when it comes to queer identity. And here we go. We have 2 young adult novels that really tackle the male gaze and women's agency, young women's agency. For example, Tigers Not Daughters is this magical realism tale, and it's been compared to Virgin Suicides, which would be a great curricular tie-in for those of you who study it. But it's about these 3 sisters who are dealing with the grief of losing their oldest sister the year before, and how each of them are dealing with that, but also confronting the male gaze and the power that men have in their lives and taking back their agency. And in Breathless, we see a young woman who is also, again, taking back her identity and her agency. And in this novel, there's frank discussion of sex and sexuality, which is very refreshing in YA and very much needed. And I think we have nonfiction next.
Oh, well, it's an honor to tell you a little about some of the best books that Vanessa Willoughby and her committee surfaced in an amazing year for nonfiction for all ages. I mean, taking on some topics for young readers that you haven't seen covered even for adults, and just taking them on fearlessly. We are no longer in the era of nonfiction as I don't know, a sedative. This is stuff that wakes you up. We have Poisoned Water, how the citizens of Flint, Michigan fought for their lives and warned the nation. A multi-system failure created an atrocity, but no one's listening. This eye-opening title skillfully documents the plight of the residents of Flint in a heart-pounding narrative that reads better than a fictional thriller. And we all know there's more to be done there. Lifting as We Climb is an amazing, unheard story, a timely, revelatory title that illuminates the often ignored and dismissed contributions of Black women in the suffrage movement. It's a portrait of history that rectifies previously whitewashed, if you will, narrative surrounding these historic ongoing events. It's a foundational book. It should be in every classroom. Woke, a young poet's call to justice, modern illustrations appeal to young readers and enhance these amazing poems. They're not afraid to discuss systemic racism, injustice, and celebrate inclusivity and diversity. An Own Voices book that is even more important and weighty in these unsettling times. Can we just say, everybody vote? These books are raising a new generation of wide-awake young people, and we need to show them how it's done until they're of voting age and can do it themselves. The last slide, of course, takes on the themes that have been with us all year. This book is Anti-Racist, 20 Lessons on How to Wake Up, Take Action, and Do the Work. Tiffany Jewell offers a compact but mighty 20-step approach to becoming anti-racist, actively becoming anti-racist by empowering young readers with probing questions and a vocabulary. The vibrant illustrations enhance the book's purpose as a social justice primer. And of course, you know about Stamped, the must-read title that rejects the concept of tolerance for the much more effective practice of anti-racism. We keep talking about Stamped in all its versions, including a board book that should have been on our radar sooner. The anti-racist board book, How to Raise an Anti-Racist Baby by Kendi. It's a wonderful year for nonfiction. Shelley, over to you.
You're on mute.
So sorry, guys. This is my third session today, so forgive me. Anyway, no nonfiction best books list will be complete without some picture book biographies. And here we have some amazing books about superstars like R-E-S-P-E-C-T, wonderful Queen of Fall, Aretha Franklin, and of course by the amazing superstar team of Carol Boston Weatherford and Frank Morrison. We have a picture book biography about the amazing and incomparable Gwendolyn Brooks, who was the first Black person to win the Pulitzer Prize, and a lesser-known biography, a bilingual biography, which is nice in Spanish and English, about a lesser-known archaeologist, Peruvian archaeologist. And moving on to younger readers, we have Honeybee by the wonderful pair or partnership of Candace Fleming and Eric Roman, the creators of Squid, so another great entry by them. And Your Place in the Universe by the amazing Jason Chan, who always finds a way to talk about STEM in a way that is accessible to even the youngest readers. And Manaz, take it away.
Thank you. The nonfiction we're gonna wrap up nonfiction, these picks with some look at books that examine history. And I love how in recent years, we're really re-examining how we represent history for younger readers. When I was younger, a lot of topics related to prejudice and bigotry were often glossed over. So I'm really heartened by books like this one. K.A. Gaddy's Flowers in the Gutter talks about some teenagers in Germany who resisted the Nazi regime. And though a lot of us know about the White Rose movement, fewer of us know about the Edelweiss Pirates. Another book is Desert Diary by Michael O'Tonnell. And this is just an amazing book that looks about the incarceration of Japanese Americans, focusing on a diary kept by one elementary school class. The use of the primary source document really drives home that it was real people affected by this imprisonment. And while a lot of other texts kind of excuse this period of U.S. history, Tunnel really pushes us to hold our government accountable. And finally, All of a Sudden and Forever is about the Oklahoma City bombing. It's a picture book, which seems like an impossible topic to convey to such a young audience. But it uses an elm tree near the site of the bomb blast as kind of a symbol to discuss how we can heal from tragedies. And it's done absolutely beautifully. Next, I'm going to move on to graphic novels. And we had a great year for graphic novels. I am the graphic novels editor, and I was so amazed at all these amazing books. We had a lot of memoir and memoir-ish books, which is no surprise given that graphic novels really are kind of rooted in that when you look at things like Mouse and Persepolis. Robin Hobb's Almost American Girl is about how Robin Hobb came over from South Korea to the American South and how she dealt with that journey. Dancing at the Pity Party by Tyler Feder is about how the author at age 19 watched her mother die from cancer. And though the book is about this really sad thing, I love that the palette is so vibrant. You know, you might think that a book about death should be gray and somber tones, but she uses this very powerful, colorful palette and to really show, you know, how multifaceted an experience it was. And also Flamer by Mike Corrado, who most of you will know from the Little Elliot books. This is him really taking on a very different sort of book. It's a book that it's fiction, but it taps his real experience. And, you know, it's about a young teen dealing with body image, with gender, with sexuality, all at a summer camp. And it's absolutely stunning. I also, one theme I feel like that we keep coming back to is this idea that, you know, these books can take on such powerful topics. Consent for Kids by Rachel Bryan takes on a topic that is so hard, so important. And for that younger audience, this is a book that everyone needs to have. And similarly, Be Gay, Do Comics, though it's for the older audience, again, it's looks at, you know, gay, queer history and also, you know, memoirs, and just such a powerful book to have. And finally, we have some fantasy, Beetle and the Hollow Bones and Snapdragon. Both of these are not just fantasy, but they're also just such inclusive, loving books, and such sumptuously drawn books at that. So it was a great year for graphic novels. Over to you, Shelley.
Thanks so much, Manaz. Again, these are just highlights. These are just a sneak peek at some of our titles. The full list will be revealed November 23rd on our website. And we want to just make sure to thank our committee members, our reviewers who worked really, really hard all year to create this list for all of you. So that is it for our presentation. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Please make sure to visit the sponsors booth. This will be recorded along with all the other webcasts today. And please be sure to visit our last keynote of the day with Patrice Cullors. Bye, everyone. Let us know what you think of the list.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening.
Bye, guys.